Hey, welcome to Gold's Grudge. So we're on the way to Bill Little's shop right now, and this video is going to be about a couple things. It's going to be about Bill Little. Everybody loves Bill Little, and we're going to see some of his expertise flowing these original camel hump cylinder heads that belong to Tony Guzzo, and it's going to be about Tony Guzzo's 302 as well. So we've had previous videos about it, and we even introduced a process of a selection process for picking the cam. And that's kind of the point of flowing these heads. We want to make sure we pick a cam that's compatible with it. But just a little background. Thanks for all your input into the selection process. Most of the responses were how to make the most power, but that's not the only consideration for Tony. But it is a very important consideration, probably the most important one. But he's not going to race it. So let's back up a little bit and talk about the real question is, why would anybody want to build a 302? So, and there's really more than one answer to that. Why does Tony want to build one? And why did GM decide to build one back in 1966? There's really two different answers. They're both very important. So let's get Tony's motivation out of the way. Tony has an original, correct Z28 Camaro. If you've seen pictures of mine, in fact, we'll try to put a picture of Tony's up. It looks exactly like mine. It's exactly the same colors. The only difference we could figure out was my interior is black and his is blue. But anyway, so Tony's motivation is that he wants his, like mine, it doesn't have the original correct engine, and he wants it to be original and correct. And the only thing that isn't right now is the engine. So that's his motivation, because lots of guys are purists and they just want it to be right. But there's another reason: follow the money. I just had my Camaro appraised about last summer anyways, and the number was pretty good. I was pretty happy with it, but the appraiser told me if it had the original engine, it'd be worth about 50% more. So that's pretty good motivation for Tony, although I don't think he has any plans to sell it. But he wants it to be correct, and there's a lot of guys like that want to be authentic. So at the same time, he wants it to perform. He's not going to race it. So why did GM decide to build one back in 1966 or so? They decided to do this. So it's not because it makes the most power, that's for sure, because it only has 302 cubic inches. But GM wanted to race Trans-American road racing, and that was very, very popular back then. It was a showcase for all the pony cars. Road racing, Camaros, Firebirds, Cougars, Mustangs, even Ramblers, Dodge Challengers, I guess they were at the time. Road racing, and it was a great marketing tool for all the auto companies. So Chevrolet wanted, obviously, to get in on that action. And the issue is that the rules for Trans-American road racing was the engine couldn't be bigger than 5 liters, which is 305 cubic inches. So Chevrolet didn't have a 305 cubic inch engine. At that time, in the early 60s, the 327 was the hot engine. Prior to that, it was a 283 in the 50s, and then the 327 came out in 62, I think. That was the hot engine. They had a fuel-injected version that made 375 horsepower. Carbureted version in the Corvettes made, I think, 365. Solid lifter cam, double pump heads, 11-to-1 compression engine. But it was illegal. 327 was too big. It couldn't use the 327. So they took 283 crankshaft, literally back then, because it was a small journal crankshaft, the original ones. And if you put a 302 or a 327 bore, 4-inch bore, together with a 283 stroke, 3-inch stroke, you got yourself 302 cubic inches, and you bore that out 30 thou, and you got through 305 cubic inches, right on the money. So That was the reason, that was their motivation to make it into a 302. So the next problem that they had, I'm going to cover the advantages of a 302 as a race engine in terms of horsepower per cubic inches, one of the very best. In terms of connecting rod length ratio to stroke, one of the very best, and RPM capability, and that's why it makes a good race engine. But at that time, the issue for GM was in order to make it legal to race Trans-American road racing, they had to sell at least 500 copies to the general public. So in 1966, they introduced it. And in 1967, they sold 602 Camaros with a 302 cubic inch engine. And the ordering code for Z28, as we call it now, was Z28, the ordering code. And that included all the mandatory equipment that you had to have to conform to the rules. So that was the 302 cubic inch engine. It had to be a 4-speed transmission. Couldn't get an automatic. You couldn't get power steering. You couldn't get air conditioning. There's a whole bunch of mandatory things. But the Z28 was only an ordering code. In fact, the first Camaros, and Robert sent us, who's got the other 302 that I'm going to build eventually when he finds another block. His 67 Camaro Z28, or 68 Camaro Z28, still doesn't even say Z28 on it. It just says 302 on the side. So they were just trying to solve a problem to conform so they could race this car in Trans-American road racing. But it caught on, and everybody realized it was a pretty cool engine. And so the marketing guys got a hold of it. They started calling it a Z28. They put the stripes on it and started to market it. In 68, I think they sold 7,000. And that even caught on more. In 69, I think it's something like 21,000 Z28s were sold. So as usual, marketing takes over. And it was a huge marketing success. Back in the day, I bought mine. They were not easy to find. So very popular. But there's another reason, too, for 302. 302, if you're trying to build an engine on the street to perform well, you build it for torque, not horsepower. Okay? So, and one of the problems that I do, one of the mistakes I make when we make videos, I always talk about the maximum horsepower that it made. And Dino Darrell brings me down to earth. And when I give him a chance to talk, he'll always talk about average horsepower and average torque, which is more important than peak horsepower and peak torque. But torque is what you feel when you stomp on the gas and you get pushed back in your seat and your tires light up and you make smoke and all that stuff. That's torque. And that's what basically, if you're building a streetcar, motor for a streetcar, that's mostly what you're looking at. Horsepower is torque over time. So enter the issue of torque times RPM. So horsepower equals torque times RPM divided by 52. So now you have another variable, which is RPM. So if you want to make more horsepower with the same engine, you got to go more RPM. So why is the 302 good? A couple of reasons. If you want to make torque, you want a longer stroke. If you want to make horsepower, you want a bigger bore. So you want a more overbore engine. In the 70s, when all the OEMs were forced to reduce compression ratio, how did they respond? They made the strokes longer. 427 became a 454. A whole bunch of 318 became a 340, all that stuff. The engines, 340 became a 360. All the engines just got bigger, and they all got bigger by longer stroke. And that gives you more lower end torque. If you want to make more horsepower, you got to go higher RPM, and therefore you want to keep your stroke down and increase your bore. So one of the advantages of an engine with a 302, for example, a 4-inch bore, 3-inch stroke, I mentioned this before, the piston speed but 302 at 7,000 RPM is about the same as the piston speed of a 350 at 6,000 RPM. So that's a big advantage. The other thing, I read Bill Jenkins' book years ago. I'm trying to buy it back now. I can't find one. The original ones are not available. There are some for sale on eBay for like $200 or something like that. But one of the things I remember about Bill Jenkins' book, and I read it back whenever it was he wrote it, is there's an optimum angle, optimum ratio between the stroke and connecting rod length. And that optimum, I think the number is around between 1.8 and 1.9. So if you take a 5.7 inch connecting rod divided by a 3-inch stroke, which is a 302 stroke, it's 1.9. So that 302, just by virtue of its own dimensions, has an optimum stroke to connecting rod length for power at high RPM, not at low RPM. And the reason for that is it slows the piston down at top dead center, and that allows more time during the overlap for fuel air mixture to enter and exhaust to get out. And that's one of the reasons why. One of the standard things guys do when they're building even 350s is use a 6-inch rod. What's the advantage of a 6-inch rod? It's exactly the same thing. It corrects that rod to stroke ratio and helps the engine to breathe better if you're going higher RPM. If you're not going higher RPM, it's not going to help you very much. But if you are, you want to get that optimum rod to stroke length. So 302, if you want to make power, you got to rev higher. So 302 can, for the reasons I mentioned, can rev higher safely. The limitation now becomes your valve train. And anybody that's building a race car, I think, I'm not sure, I don't follow it, but the Indy cars that used some version of a Chevrolet small block back in the day had a 2-inch stroke. Okay, so, but they went 10 or 12,000 RPM. So the deal is, if you want to make power, you need to go RPM. Let me give you another example. Bill Little's super stock car, which we're going to see Bill right now to flow those heads, is only 350 cubic inch, and it's only, I think, 9.2 or 9.3 compression ratio. All kinds of restrictions and NHRE rules. The volume of the inlet port can only be so much, etc., etc. And I'm not sure how much power it makes, but if it's running in low tens in Bill's car, it's got to be making probably 700 horsepower. So how do they do that? They rev it. He revs probably 8,000 RPM or more. Now, that's great for a race engine. Don't forget, racing is, if you're racing, drag racing, it's work over time, not instantaneous torque that you feel in a street car. It's work over time. So the more RPM you can go, the more work you're going to get done in that period of time. So if you're driving a quarter mile, the more RPM cycles you can make in that quarter mile, the better you're going to do. And the shorter the time you are on the track, and the shorter your lapse time is, the less time you got to get that done. So the more RPM you got to rev in order to make up for that. So that's the difference between a race car and a street car. So Z28 engine, as they came from the factory, were cool. I had one, but they weren't that fast off the showroom floor. 2.2 first gear, 3-inch stroke, 373 rear end, and they didn't have a lot of torque. They were fun from about 4,000 to 7,000 RPM, but below that, you felt like you were towing a trailer or something. So, so we want to build Tony's engine to be fun. We want to make power, not just for bragging rights, but we want to make the kind of power that he can enjoy, and we want to make it authentic. So we're going to Bill Little's. We're almost there now, and the next clip will be there. We'll introduce Bill. He's already got Tony's cylinder heads. Get them on his flow bench and see what they do, and that'll be part of our decision making. Okay, we're back here. Finally, we got to Bill Little's shop, and what we're going to do today, I kind of made an introduction on the way here. This is about Bill Little, and it's about Tony Guzzo's cylinder head. So we got multiple videos and looking for input from subscribers on the way we're going to do this. And one of the things is selecting the camshaft, which is a little bit tricky because there's a whole bunch of factors to consider. But if you're going to make power, one of the things that many people suggestion, and it's valid, you should flow the cylinder heads and see how that matches up with the camshaft. So that's why we're here with Bill. Bill's going to flow. Tony gave me two heads that he had. Someone's done a little bit of porting on them, and Bill can talk about that. And then we got Robert's heads here with us as well. And if we get time, we're going to compare Robert's heads. It looks like they're untouched, and see what they are, and then get Bill's recommendations where we go from here. So the only other thing I have to say on the way here, I made a little intro in the truck, and I mentioned that I read the Bill Jenkins book years ago, and I lost it. I wish I could buy it back. Well, Bill had one. He's just sold it to me. I can't tell you the price. It's a lot more than I paid a long time ago, but a lot less than I can get it on Amazon or anywhere. So thanks, Bill, for a good deal.
You're welcome, Alan.
I read it. I can still. I actually quoted it on the way here, and I'm going to read it now and make sure I got the quote right, I guess. So, okay, it's all yours, Bill. Show us what you're going to do here. So.
Hi, guys. How you doing today? It's pretty warm. I've been sweating. I got stuck out in the rain, so I didn't just get out of the shower. So, okay, the heads on the bench. We're going to flow a left-hand port and a right-hand port, and one exhaust port. So I've got the flow plate on here, and we're going to check flow starting at 50 thou, 100, 200, 300, 400, and 5, maybe even 600. We're going to check velocity. When we took the valves out, I noticed that somebody had opened the bowl up underneath the valve seat. Probably 95% of the actual valve seat. So I don't know what to expect here. The bowl underneath the valve seat is actually small. So we'll see what happens here. And I think we could probably fix that by putting a 205 valve in there and maybe getting 3 angles on the valve seat instead of the 2 that are on there now. So we're the big air compressor quit. So we have the small one hooked up to the flow bench, and it might come on and make a noise, but we'll try and work around that. So let's get the flow bench fired up here, and we'll do a test on number 1 intake. I'm going to check the velocity here. velocity here. Well, that surprised me. It's actually not too awful bad. I thought the low lift flow would have been a lot less. We had 75 CFM at 100 and 147 at 2, 180 at 3, 211 at 4, and then it started to taper off 214 and then 221. And then we did 223, I guess it was. The velocity was 325, which is very, very good in the center of the port, and the swirl was 2,600 RPM. I saw on the swirl meter. So
what's your maximum lift? 500? Yeah.
That's at 1, 2, 3, 4. That was actually at 600.
Oh, 600.
600. Yeah.
But it didn't change much from 5 to 6.
No, it only picked up 6 from 5 to 6.
Got it.
So low lift numbers pretty good actually. You get 211 at 400. That's pretty good, honestly. So velocity is good. Swirl is good. You know, maybe that valve job didn't hurt as much. Maybe it's better than it looked, right? So
yeah.
You know, sometimes things fool you. You know, you think things should be a certain way. I remember I did a set of Merlin big block heads, and for a guy 3 years ago for his drag car, and I noticed there was no back cut on the valve, and I thought, oh boy, I'm going to make this better. And I put a back cut on it and lost 40 CFM at 700 lift.
You put it back on after?
I had to get new valves.
That's sure.
But 40 CFM at 700 just with a back cut. It did not want any back cut on the valve. So you know, if you don't have a flow bench, you don't know. You can do more damage than you can good, right? You know. So
this got a little bit out of the chamber too, right?
Yes,
which took a couple CCs out. I think we CC'd these heads at 66.
So. Yeah. So I figured that. We'll show you in a little while how much is out of the chamber, but I figured that was worth 10 or 12 CFM. So the head would have.
The chamber helped a little bit.
The chamber would help 10 or 12 CFM. Okay, the super stock guys were doing that years ago, cheating. They were taking stuff out of the chamber like that when they weren't supposed to, and they were running fast.
You're not supposed to touch that, right?
No, exactly, exactly. Sure, but nobody.
How do you hide that?
You didn't, but so many guys were doing it, they just allowed it.
Is that right? Okay.
Hi guys, we're back, and we're going to do number 3 cylinder, number 3 intake, and it's set at 50 thou right now, so we're going to do a test. If you look at the numbers on here, so this flow bench is a floating depression, so it doesn't stay at 28 inches. It can range anywhere from 27.9 to 28.1. The computer program will set the flow numbers at 28 inches. So that's why these float back and forth. I have a pedal down on the floor here, and when it stabilizes, I push the pedal and it averages that number, these numbers for 5 seconds, and then the computer program, it'll put what the number was down here. So, all right, we're at 50 thou right now. We're gonna average that and move up to 100 thou. Okay, Alex, I'm gonna back this off 100 thou, and I want you to listen to the port. See how the port got quieter? And if you look at the swirl, here's the swirl meter. So 1300, 12, 1300. Now I'm going to open it up 100 thou and listen to the port and watch what the swirl does. See how the swirl went up 1,000 RPM? And the port sounds loud. It's not happy. And the flow decreased quite a bit. That went up again to 2,700, 2,800. The flow didn't increase. So there's something going on with that port. It's not terribly happy. So it was happy up to 1, 2, 3, 400. It was 228, which is very good. And then at 500, it lost 28 CFM. And then at 600, it gained some back, but it still wasn't happy. That's when the swirl increased. So swirl is a good thing. Flow is a good thing. Velocity is a good thing. Almost always, when if the swirl increases, you're going to lose flow because it takes energy for the air to swirl on an angle. And as the air is going in here, it's turning and it blocks some of the other air off in the chamber. So that's what makes that gurgling noise. So you don't want a port that sounds like it's working hard. You want it just a nice swish, swoosh, you know. So anyway, that port's got some issues. And I'm not really sure where it is right now.
That could be an issue with inconsistency, right? Somebody could get one port right, and
it's probably something in the short term, maybe. You know, it could also be the valve job up top too.
If you just fixed it, you make the ports the same, or if you report it, then they're all going to get changed anyway. Right?
Exactly,
right?
And you're never going to. If you have $1 million, you might get every port to be exactly the same, but if you're within 8 CFM, I always look at averages, and if I'm within 2 or 3 on an average over the lift curve, I'm happy, regardless of what the peak numbers are. Kind of like the dyno, right, Alan?
Yeah. You drive yourself crazy looking for.
Oh, you drive yourself nuts, and you know, sometimes, you know, you get chasing airflow, and you take 30 thou out of a radius, and you lose 15 CFM.
Right.
And there's nothing worse than doing that.
Be happy with what you got if you're close, right?
The low and mid lift numbers are very good with this port, and I know that by the time we get the higher lift numbers to be where it should be, it's going to take some of those lower numbers away.
Okay.
You know, the trick is to keep all the numbers the same, but
exactly,
that's kind of hard to do sometimes. So, okay, we're going to reset things up, and we're going to do an exhaust port. We're doing number 1 exhaust port. We've done number 1 and number 3 intake ports. We're going to do the exhaust port, and then we'll see what the intake to the exhaust ratio is going to be. Okay, we had 180 at 600 lift, 173 at 500, 158 at 400. Not a bad port. It's probably pretty good for the 302 cubic inch. The intake to the exhaust ratio is going to be roughly 80%, but that's only because the intake port's a little bit weak. So we have to make the intake port better.
Not make the exhaust port worse.
Right.
That's the other choice, right? Okay.
Excuse me.
And then comment, Bill, on dual pattern versus single pattern cams based on that information.
So my take on a dual pattern cam, this engine probably wouldn't need a dual pattern cam with 180 CFM airflow. I look at the stroke, how long the stroke is, and I think that's more important than what the actual intake to the exhaust ratio. The shorter the stroke, the less duration you need on the exhaust. It's just that simple because it's time from the bottom of the cylinder to the top of the cylinder. Volume of the cylinder is different, so you just don't need it as much. High compression motor, it will evacuate the exhaust a lot quicker than what a lower compression will. If you have a 8.5 to 1 motor, you might need more exhaust duration because the pressure in the cylinder is less when the exhaust valve opens. Higher compression motor, you might have another 200 pounds pressure in there, and when that exhaust valve opens, it's gone really fast. So all that stuff comes into play. And you know, cam timing is more than just one thing. You got to look at everything else in the engine when you do it, right? Cam companies are all about more exhaust duration. Iski's pretty good. They use single pattern cams, so they've been around for years. A lot of my super stock engines, my small block had 6 degrees less on the exhaust, and that's where it made the most power, and it went faster down the track. So it's not always about power, it's how does it accelerate. So you want to keep the air in the cylinder, you don't want it going out the exhaust. So that's my take on it. I'm sure there's people that probably think a little bit different, but that's okay. Everybody needs an opinion. Okay, we're back with the stock cylinder head that's had no modifications to it. They're both 291 castings. The first one that we flowed had screw-in studs. This one has press-in studs. So we're going to see what the intakes flow compared to what the modified head did. So
I'll just add, that's Robert sent his head. So Robert's
Robert,
the other customer that wants me to build a 302.
Okay,
and he's got a lot of OEM parts. The block he brought us, right now we're saying we can't use it.
Right.
But these are Robert's heads.
These are Robert's
They're
heads,
original,
okay.
correct. And I think Robert's got another set of heads up in Sudbury too. But so you're comparing Robert's
to
old
Tony's
stock heads to Tony's heads that have been modified.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Get this. I gotta reset this flow bench here back to intake. check the velocity. Okay, we're going to print this and compare it to the other head. All right, Alex, let's push this, let's get this over here so we can look at these. Paper's damp. So we're going to start. So this is 50 thou here, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the last number, we just won't worry about that last number. We're probably not going to lift it that high. So the stock head is -2 over the head that's had some work done. We're 75. We're -3. -21. That's 48 and 80. What's that? 40, 30. 32, isn't it? So
Yep,
we're
that's right.
-32. 211, 188. That's 12. It's 23. And that's 9, 10. That's 205, 214. That's about 9, I guess, -9. And then 221. So that's 9, about 19, I guess. That's close to. I'm getting screwed up here. 4. That's about 25. -25. So that's a lot. -2, -3, -21, -32, -23, -9, and -25. So whoever did the work on Tony's head, they actually helped quite a little bit.
Good job.
You know,
That's good.
so now we're back flowing a stock exhaust port on this 291. And we're going to compare it to Tony's head, and we're going to see what the difference is on that. Blowing the exhaust makes a lot of heat. We were up to 107 degrees there.
Oh, wow. Oh,
from 94.
So is that right?
Yeah,
I didn't notice that.
Trying to blow all that air through a small orifice certainly does heat it up, doesn't it?
Compressed air, it makes heat.
Yep. Okay, we're gonna print this one.
Molecules are closer together.
That's it. That's that one right there. I'm going to print that. All right, so we'll get this Ford off of here. We don't need it. So this is Tony's here. This is the stock
Robert.
head. Robert.
Yeah.
Stock Robert head. Okay, well, we'll go with the stock one here. We're a little bit better there, +1. About the same there at 100. 86 is about the same. 19 -6, -9, and then this is where it's going to start making a difference. 13, 15, -15, and then -18.
Is that at 500, Bill? Is that where the last
That's at
number is?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 was the last
At
one.
600.
So we're not going to be using 600 probably. So
Right,
it's
right.
basically, like 15 CFM worse on the
Stock head is worse.
Stock head,
Stock head
yes.
is worse.
Yes.
That's good news.
Yes, but I'm pretty sure that some of these mid-lift numbers, low and mid-lift numbers, could be a lot better with a decent valve job on it too.
Okay, that's the
So,
other thing. Yeah, I think Robert's heads haven't been touched at all.
Not
right?
at all, no.
So obviously you can improve on them just by doing a valve job, right?
Exactly. Oh yeah,
Depending
huge,
which way it
huge.
goes, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Angle valve job and back cutting and all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Now we're going to look at, if it's okay to do that. Now we're going to look at how this chamber here has been opened up on this head.
That's Tony's head again.
That's
right?
Tony's head. So it's actually unshrouded the valve quite a bit from here to here, and that's a modification that the super stock guys used to do years ago to cheat a little bit. You got to be careful because it's very thin. The water jacket's right in here, and you don't want to take too much out of here. The head bolt it's solid right in here around the head bolt, so you could take a little more out of here if you wanted to.
Have we got room for a 205 valve there?
I
Or is there any point in 205 valve?
think a 205 valve could fix the seat a little bit, quite possibly.
But it's and then it's shrouded more though too, right?
Yeah, like there's not much angle underneath this seat now. There's a little more here, but it's not very. There's hardly anything right here. A little bit here, not much over
that
here.
You can fix with the valve job.
Yeah, I could fix that, and it needs to be opened up a little bit right here in the corners. These corners of the radius here, it's sort of hard to see, but I think it just needs a better valve job, and it would probably fix it up quite a bit. I noticed the valves are not back cut at all.
Well, there's an opportunity, really, right?
Well, it'll either help it a lot or it won't like it. But
really? Okay.
My experience with small blocks is that putting a 30 or 35 degree back cut will help it everywhere.
Sure. Okay.
So there's quite a bit to be gained.
Oh, okay.
By doing
even with Tony's head.
Yes.
Even with Tony's head.
And I mean they've already had a fair bit of metal taken out, but they can be made quite a bit better.
The only thing about unshrouding the valves is they took a couple cc's out of the combustion chamber.
Exactly.
Which
Makes
we're
the chamber
struggling
big.
with compression as it is. We're at about 10.5 based on a 64 cc head. So if it's 66, we're probably 10.3 or 4 or something.
No,
like that, right?
I don't think these heads have been milled very much by the looks of it.
Well, we can probably do a bit of that. Maybe take 20 thou off.
Every 4 thou is 1 cc.
Okay, so there's 5 cc's if we take 20 thou off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would help it quite a bit.
Yeah.
Then
we've got to get the manifold to fit again.
Now
The block's not decked though. That's one thing, right?
No,
That helps.
that helps. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
So we'll when we get the heads done, it would be kind of nice to take the stock intake and actually hold it up to the head once it's done and just see what the stock intake actually does.
Sure. If it's matched, we have the stock intake.
We should match it, to what the head is.
Because he's opened up the ports here.
Yes, they're like a 1205 Fel Pro gasket. So to open up the the manifold might, or make the manifold slightly smaller.
Yeah. You don't want it bigger, that's for sure.
No bigger, not at all. No,
Yeah.
no. So it'll be interesting. You could make the head flow 280, and the intake flows 220 or 230. You're just wasting your time and money.
Right.
You know.
The limitation is the biggest restriction, right?
Now I have done a set of trick flow heads for my friend Tony, and they were already a good head, and I think we got them. So they were the double bump heads that look stock, and I got them up to 290, not by making them bigger, by making them smaller, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
And
okay, you did
smaller.
Wow, is that
Okay,
right?
smaller in certain areas, and his 302 made more than 450 horse, and more.
I saw the sheets from Tony's. I'm not talking about Tony Guzzo now.
No, it's a different Tony. There's lots of Tonys around.
Yeah. They're amazing.
Yep, Tony Fabiano, and I know he does some street racing, so I'm not going to tell all his secrets. So
it was good anyway.
Yes, it was. He was happy with it. So
everybody's been looking forward to this day where we get to flow these heads. So we flowed Robert's stock heads against Tony's heads, and that's going to help us decide, depending what cam we use, how much more work we put into them. If we go with a really big cam, we're probably going to have Bill do a full flow job on them to make use of that cam.
Yes.
Whole bunch of other parts of the decision. So if you're wondering whether Bill knows what he's doing or not, this is around his 3,000th head flow exercise. So he's got. I think you got it figured out by now, right?
Scares me every time I see that. It's like, man, I've spent half my life on this.
Well, that's a couple of man years. People usually work about 1,800 man years. Yeah. So if you took it 2 hours to do each one, right? That's part of
a lot of flow tests.
Yeah, that's part of your life. So anyway, great watching it, and gives us lots of valuable information. Both Tony and Robert want to do the right thing. They want to make the best 302 they can get, and we're taking a scientific approach. We're not guessing. We're using expertise, and we're using technical data. And we'll be back to you with the final decision. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the content of this video. If you want to see Bill back here, if you give me a subscribe, that's what makes it making YouTube. I didn't build any motors today, and neither did Bill. No. So, because we made videos. So if you keep subscribing, we'll keep making more. Thank you for watching.
I would just like to say one thing. Thanks, guys, for the kind words. There's a lot of good people that watch this channel, and we really appreciate it.
Okay, we just remembered the tip of the day, so I'm going to let Bill fill in the blanks here. But if you're watching that and you think, well, you know what, let's go get my heads ported. Let's talk to an expert that's flow bench 3,000, probably ported about that many as well, right?
Probably.
How long does it take to port a set of cast iron heads, Bill? How much work?
Cast iron heads, Ford, Chevy, Chrysler, 40 hours. And now that's disassembly and assembly and doing the valve job, and that's a complete job. Putting the valve springs, checking all that stuff also. But the main part of it is porting it, and it's on and off the bench maybe 20 or 30 times, over that time. So it's time consuming, very time consuming.
And if you're thinking about doing that, that's from a guy who's done thousands of them. If you're an amateur and doing it the first time and going back to the manual every time you do a port, right? I know I'm no expert at porting. I tried porting a few. I found the first or second port was kind of fun. It was pretty good.
You're not alone.
It was pretty much downhill after that.
I am still that way.
It wasn't very much fun.
The first two ports, you have stuff figured out, and then it's like by the 7th or 8th, you're just so sick of that cylinder head. I want to go and do a transmission. I'm sick of cylinder heads at that point.
I have never ported very many, but I've already ported my last one. I can tell you that right now. Thanks for watching Gold's Garage.